tuning in from in the chat, so we officially know we are live because there is absolutely a lag from when we start to when you can actually see us. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, hello, my name is Tegan Bartos. I am the founder and managing director of Jolt Your Career, and I help ambitious professionals just like you achieve your version of professional success and financial stability and all of those other things that come along with the corporate career. Ironically enough, today my guest is going to be talking about something that may be the exact opposite of a corporate career, because in his case, he left it. And in my case, I actually left it too. So without further ado, I am going to jump right in and bring Paul Morris to the stage. Hey, Paul,
Hey,
thanks so much for joining me.
sure, Tegan, thank you.
All right, so you got to let us know a little bit about you. You were an IT manager not too long ago, and you have officially full-time pivoted to life coach. So how'd
Yeah,
that happen, and what's the journey been like?
it's been quite a journey. I love that this is the topic that we're talking about today because I truly, it's deep in my soul. I believe that I'm living it. Yeah, like you said, I was in IT for 16 years. Kind of went right into that career right out of high school. And I would say probably around 5, 6 years ago, I started a journey of inner growth, inner exploration, kind of understanding what's important to me, and it was really kind of one of those slow burns. It really was kind of took a lot of time to build up, and I would say probably sometime last year, I would say early last year, I had a moment where crazy day at work, 20 meetings, and I just kind of was like staring out the window, and I was like, this isn't this isn't what I want to do anymore. Like this, I don't want to be caught up in the corporate cog. I want to be able to help people. And I didn't know how I wanted to help people. I just knew that I wanted to help people. And so I started to kind of do some research, and I said, maybe I need to just change careers. So I started to look at, career counselors, and all of these career counselors kept referring to themselves as life coaches. And I was like, the hell's a life coach? And so I started to dig in, and the more that I learned about life coaching, I was like, this is it. Like this, that spoke to me on such a deep level. And then I just took it and ran with it, and immediately fell in love with coaching, all things coaching, all things helping people, and just being able to be myself. Because I think that's really ultimately what it uncovered, is I was able to be myself truly. And so the more that I got into it, the more I fell in love with it. And the more, this is going to sound very silly, the more I felt out of alignment in my current career. Because it really uncovered this is who I was. And it got to the point where I was stressed. I was feeling unfulfilled. I was feeling anxious all the time. And I was like, this isn't what I was meant to do. And so I made the decision to jump. It was about a month ago, almost to the day, that I made the jump to go full time into coaching, because I care so much about it. I'm so passionate about it that I don't want to half-ass it, and I couldn't juggle both at the same time. So that's a probably a very long story made short, but that's the nuts and bolts.
Isn't it wild once you start advancing in your training and skill sets of being a coach, how you're like, man, when I was a corporate leader, why didn't they give us more of this?
Yes,
Because
yes,
good leaders are great coaches. They ask questions, they're empathetic, they're authentic, they're strengths based. I mean, it's just really ironic how beneficial that is across the board. And so tell us, well, let's go ahead and say hey to some of the people who are here. Carolyn, hello. Monica, how's it going? Trevor, and we have a LinkedIn user. And so for those of you who are not very familiar with your LinkedIn privacies and settings, you can go into your privacies and settings and say how you want to be viewed on LinkedIn. So it can be public, be partial, or it can be private. I myself show up, I think, private, because anytime I click on somebody's profile, then a job seeker gets excited thinking that they're going to get a job. And I'm like, no, I don't get a job. I don't know, maybe I was being nosy, or I
Yeah.
could have accidentally clicked on it. But anyways, hello to everyone tuning in who dropped a comment and who is just listening behind the scenes. We are talking about how to find alignment in your life today with life coach Paul Morris. And all coaches work a little bit differently. I
Mhm.
call myself a career coach, but I'm more so a consultant because I'm giving advice
Mhm.
more often than I am listening, observing. And so tell me a little bit about what a life coach is to you, and how would someone know if working with a life coach would be the right resource for them?
Sure. It's such a great question. And I love that you kind of use yourself as an example, right? You're a career coach, but almost you're a consultant, right? You're giving advice. And for me, coaching, well, I mean, coaching started in two areas, right? Sports and theater. Those are the two, when you think about a coach, you think about a baseball coach, football coach, a voice coach. Coaching, a coach is able to see and has that outside perspective, right? No matter how good you think you are, you cannot see yourself from the outside from a different perspective. So coaches help you, be able to uncover where are some of those areas that you need to shift perspective, things that are getting in your way. Maybe you're getting in your own way. So they help you kind of uncover that. So a life coach, it really takes a difference from a career coach or anything like that. A life coach really takes that holistic approach to your entire life, because life isn't just a big umbrella. It is the umbrella, right? Everything is under your life: career, health, finances. All of that is under the umbrella that is life, and all of those pieces are connected in one way or another. If you are absolutely miserable at your job, that is without a doubt, whether you see it or not, is going to impact every other area of your life. So if you feel, if you sit back and say, man, I'm feeling unfulfilled at work, maybe I need to talk to somebody, kind of exactly what I did, right? I just wasn't feeling fulfilled. And you talk to a coach, and they start to dig in and understand why you're feeling that way, where are you right now, and where do you want to be, right? Because I think the other side of this coin, Tegan, is that coaching really bumps up to therapy, but therapy is a whole different ballgame, where that goes in the past, right? What happened as a child, what happened back then that's making you feel the way
Yep.
you are today? Where coaching is absolutely, we're looking forward, how do we get you to where you want to go? And I think that's the biggest difference when it comes to life coaching. You come to a session, and we're going to have a conversation about what's going on in your life, and it could be money, it could be relationships, it could be anything, and we're going to help shift you from where you are to where you want to be in that conversation.
And it's about taking action, right? Like if you're at a point and you don't want to just recover from the trauma of the past, you want to move forward and have actionable steps to achieve the goals that come next, whether you know what that is or not. It's about taking action to have that clarity, taking action to be brave enough to pivot into a career. I work with clients all the time whose parents, you need to be that lawyer, you need to be that engineer, you need to whatever for the sake of the family and honor and all of those things. And somebody looks back and is like, no, I'd actually rather be, an opera singer or something wild like that, or a chef or something where the family traditionally doesn't look at that. And it sometimes takes a lot of courage to step outside of societal norms or familial expectations and live in alignment with yourself, and even really figure out who you are. Because like you said, Paul, the holistic aspect of your life is so much more than just your career. I mean, spirituality and all of those different areas, finances, how you want to be viewed in health and wellness and in friendships and relationships and your family and whatnot. There's a lot of pieces to put together to figure that all out. So, um, how does it look like for you when you're helping people go through that self-discovery phase and have the courage to be in alignment? I mean, we're so ingrained by society that we should be a certain way, like gender roles, for example, or in family that there's expectations that you need to live a certain lifestyle that may be outside of what you're actually feeling called to. Think about like religion. If you grow up, Catholic and you leave the Catholic Church, it's like
Mm,
you brought shame to your
really?
family. And so how do you start making some of those ideas for yourself and move away from, I hate to say brainwashing, but like we're
Right.
indoctrined to feel a certain way, to think a certain way, to act a certain way. And if it feels off, how do we find more alignment? Where do we start?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question, and I think you hit on the key word there is being brave, right? And I think that plays into a couple different areas. One, it's being brave with yourself and looking in the inside. And I think one of the most powerful tools that I use, and then really anybody who wants to kind of start to peek behind that curtain, is to do a values assessment, right? Do a values assessment of your life. And there are wonderful tools out there. I've got one that I use that really just, there's a number of values that are on the sheet, and it looks at, okay, look at this particular value, and on a scale of 1 to 10, rate how important it is to you, that particular value. So you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. Then the next question is, okay, how are you walking that walk, right? When it comes to that value. So creativity could be a 9 on my list, but when I think about it in my day to day, not just at work, but outside of work, I'm a 2. That means that there is a portion of who I am at my being that I'm not stepping into every single day for whatever reason that is. And so that is where it takes, that bravery that we talked about, to go through that list and really honor and think about, when I look at these values, are these my values? Are these the values that are coming from society? Are these the values coming from my family, from my history, from whatever it is, who I think I need to be? And it really is, being brave and saying, you know what, you know, creativity is something that was pushed on by my family, because mom and dad are artists or musicians, and creativity just doesn't speak to me, and so I'm going to mark it as a 2. It's not as important. So it's that bravery, but a values assessment really does give you that, that foundation of, okay, here's where I am in all of these areas of my life, being able to look at how important these values are and where am I in walking that walk. And then you start to dive into, okay, look, I've got a bunch of 8, 9s, and 10 values, but I'm only at a 1, 2, or a 3. And, no wonder you feel stressed. No wonder you feel miserable, because you're out of alignment, right? Your values, you're not being able to live up to your values. And so, of course, you're going to feel out of alignment in that area.
Absolutely. And call me a negative Nancy, but I've found traumatic events or difficult situations help us really identify what our values are. And so, like, take the pandemic, for example. So many people realize how much of a priority family actually is to them. And maybe they always said family is a priority, but then were they actually showing up for their
Right.
family? Or, were they doing right by their loved ones, or whatever may be true for them and how they choose to honor that value. Community was one that came out for me as an introvert. I never realized how important my volunteer work was until I couldn't do it, until physically going into these places that I'm really passionate about going to. They said, "Oh, nobody can come in here."
Right.
And I was like, "Oh man." And so, integrity has always been one for me. And I lie, I'm not perfect. But I know that there's certain things throughout my career where if someone asks me to cross a line that I feel um, takes me outside of integrity, I would rather sacrifice some of my comfort than to do something that I felt was wrong. And so in those moments it really comes out, hey, when no one is watching or when there's a lot of risk on the line, what values do you actually live by?
Sure.
And that can sometimes help us narrow down, like, yeah, sure, I want peace, but like I also like watching, dramatic reality TV shows. And so, although peace sounds like a great value, and I do want my peace, I also love drama,
Sure.
those cheesy little reality shows. And so, certain values I can deprioritize, and certain values I can put on that pedestal, like you were talking about ranking.
Mhm.
And then when it comes to figuring out that alignment in your life, or for me, where I focus on people in their careers, focus on what areas of life or careers need to change, get you closer to that. And no world is a perfect place. No company is a
Sure.
perfect place. No relationship is going to be a perfect place. No family is going to be a perfect place. But you can take action to get closer to that alignment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you use the word sacrifice, because I think that that's a very powerful view of that, right? Like, what am I willing to sacrifice? Am I willing to sacrifice for whatever, for money, for promotion, whatever it is? I think that's a very powerful word.
It's definitely corporate teaches you a lot, and I would love for people in the chat to go ahead and tune in and see how they've discovered some of this clarity for themselves, and some of this alignment. But it's corporate puts you through a ringer,
Mhm.
and every company's culture is so significantly different. And even the company as a whole, your individual business unit, depending on the personalities that are there, can completely change the way that you experience things. And whether we like it or not, or believe it or not, um, our environment does impact other areas of our life. And so if we're around, just constant negativity and backstabbing at work, it's going to take a toll on us emotionally. And then that trickles over into our life,
Right.
our family life, our community life. And so once you've identified, Paul, the your values, your top values. Those are the things that you can exhibit in terms of, your family relationships, spirituality, health and fitness, finances, personal growth, other categories that you may feel are of top importance in life. Then you break them down important. And then how do you take that next step? And so, okay, I've got some more clarity on my values, but then what's the next step on finding more alignment in terms of, um, do I need to make a change in my career, in my relationship, in my location? Like if somebody's just miserable every day because it's cold, though, then maybe you might want to move someplace that's, like little things can sometimes
Sure.
make a big difference. So, what comes next after the clarity of your values?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and I think it really comes down to, first, it's understanding that these values are truly you, right? They are. It's not work, Paul, and it's not at home, Paul. Like, not work, Paul doesn't have a certain set of values, and they're the same. Like, it is. These are Paul's values. So understanding that if you have identified where there are values that are not being met, then you start to explore that a little bit. You start to explore, going back to the creativity one. I think that's such a wonderful one, because I think everybody loves being creative in some way, music, art, whatever it is. If creativity is a very important value to me and it's not being met, where isn't it being met, right? So then you start to look at, well, let's look at my corporate job. um, IT, right? I'm managing people, I'm managing a team. Well, if creativity is very important to me, how can I bring creativity into my day-to-day job? And that could be anything. That could be creative team meetings, that could be creative, if art is important to you, creating, fancy PowerPoint presents or whatever it is, but you start to align yourself to those values because it's important to who you are. And then looking outside of work, well, how can I be more creative outside of work? How can I look at, maybe I used to draw a lot. Maybe I want to start drawing again. So then you say, okay, well, I'm going to take the time to draw. I'm going to set aside an hour a week, right? Whatever it is, you start to set those small goals because you're setting goals to really realign yourself to life. And so setting those very small goals to say I'm going to draw because it's what's important to me and it's who I am, then you start to do that. So when you have a good idea of where your values are not being met or that they're out of alignment, you start to explore, well, where in my life are they out of alignment? For example, you could be very creative at work, but at home you're not creative at all for whatever reason, and that will feel out of balance because, like I said, those values they're for the same person. So it's really starting to explore them on a deeper level.
Isn't
And
it
coach,
interesting? Oh, go ahead and
no, go
finish.
ahead.
Isn't it interesting how sometimes people have a passion that then they do as a profession and they don't like doing it at home anymore.
Right,
Like, maybe somebody who really likes working with their hands and is always building and tinkering finally gets that job. And then once they get home, they're like, I'm too tired to do any of this for myself. And it takes some of that passion out. And
sure.
so I often work with clients who ask, do you think I should pursue my passion as a career? And the answer really is it depends,
Mhm.
will that career drain you or take away from that passion, and will that career be able to sustain the type of lifestyle you want? In the case of the creative, maybe somebody has family responsibilities where they have a certain amount of income that they're required to have, and even though they would love to be an artist, that income stability just isn't there, so they take a role and continue with their artwork in their free time until they could potentially have it be their full-time thing.
Sure.
And even though at work it may not be their passion, that role, as long as it's not toxic, that paycheck that role then gives you, it's then worth it. So it may not be in complete alignment with what you should choose should money not be a factor in life,
Mhm.
but it's not terrible. And it's so interesting how sometimes people can just go to work to collect a paycheck, and that is perfect for them. They meet expectations, they do good work, they might even excel in what they do, but that that's like the extent of it. Then they go home and then they're living their best life
Sure.
because that's what they focus. So it's so interesting how different people are, and I think it's important when we're having these types of conversations to let people know what works for Paul won't work for me, and
Right.
what works for me won't work for Paul, and that's going to be the case with you too. For anybody tuning in, it's okay for your path to look different than someone else's, because what you value, what you truly like and dislike, is going to play out in a different way than every other person you encounter. And
Mhm.
that's the beauty of individuality.
Absolutely, absolutely. I love that. You're exactly right. I mean, we're all unique in this world, and everybody is different. So it is. I mean, it's collecting that paycheck because you know that paycheck is supporting you to do things that you truly enjoy. Then that's a completely different aspect of where I go to work and I'm just feeling maybe there's multiple values that are being damped down at your career, right? And you're just too far out of alignment. So taking that paycheck is like, fine, like just give it to me so you know what I mean?
Yep.
So but you're exactly right. Everybody's going to be different, and exploring, like we were just talking about, exploring those values. There's many people who've probably never done a values assessment, right? Who've never looked at a list of 50 values and understood how important is this to me in my life, and where is it and how is it showing up. And I
Yeah.
think that can open a lot of eyes, and shift things for people very quickly.
I think that an interesting time in people's lives is when they have children and then when they become empty nesters, because then values tend to be reprioritized and you lose a little bit of yourself at times because you're giving so much to keep someone else alive,
Sure.
or because you gave so much to make them a decent human being and contributor to society, that you had to take a step back and some of the things that you would want for yourself. And I personally, and with a lot of my clients, I found that sometimes we step a little too far outside of ourselves and we give too much from others. And so what I know we're getting close to time, but what would you say about people who pour so much into others that they lose themselves, and they're so far removed from who they are because they're constantly thinking and putting others first, not realizing that it was detrimental, because unless you're okay, I mean, it's sustainable for a little bit of time, but not long term. You eventually have to prioritize yourself and your needs and fill your own cup before you can start filling into others again. So do you have, what would you say to busy parents, busy professionals who are giving their all to their kids and to their job and feeling like they're losing a little bit of themselves?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Such a tough question too. I mean, everybody's going to be different, but I mean, it's you think about, when you're on the airplane, they always tell you to put your oxygen mask on first, right before you help anybody else. There's a reason for that, right? I mean, it's if you pass out, you're not going to be able to help other people as they pass out. But I think you know talking to people who are giving themselves so much and giving up so much of themselves to other people, they may have a concern that if I start to focus on myself, if I start to look at self-care, that I'm being selfish. And that's not true. That's not the truth at all. You are responsible for you. You're the only one that can take care of you. Nobody else can do that for you. So I think what popped up for me is just it's not being selfish to take care of yourself, to fill your own cup, to explore what's really important to you. Like you were talking about the empty nesters. I mean, you're exactly right. You could do a values assessment today. 10 years from now, you could do a different value assessment, and all of those numbers could be completely different, and that's okay. We've
Yeah,
seen that.
because carpooling this little
Yeah,
curly head cutie patootie around is not going to be on the top of my
yeah,
daily
right.
to-do list. Traveling is going to look a lot different
Yeah,
in
exactly,
15 years.
exactly.
Okay, so Paul, thank you so much for joining today. One of your lines that you frequently use is transforming lives one conversation at a time. So for those of you tuning in who need that sounding board, that's exactly what a coach does. We serve as a sounding board. So when you're word vomiting, you're not being PC, you're just letting it all out in any type of order that it comes to mind. We can reiterate these things back to you and start to provide some clarity when before all there is like a train wreck going on in your brain. And so if you're feeling out of alignment, or that you're starting to lose yourself, or that your values are getting murky for one reason or another, it might be a sign that it's time to slow down, reevaluate, reassess, and proactively own the next steps in your life. So before you get too far removed from everything that you hold sacred, you can reel back whatever it is that's not in alignment to get to where you really want to be. And with that, Paul, first thing, Paul, before I let you take it away, next week I am going to be talking with an agency recruiter about how to have your LinkedIn profile stand out. So if you want to tune in next Friday, same time, that's what we're going to be talking about. But to wrap this alignment conversation up today, Paul, what would you like to share that if somebody's really, and I didn't prep him for this, so
No, no.
take a second if you need to think about it. What would you say to somebody who's really feeling um, out of alignment and just kind of a little bit of a mess right now? What words of advice or calming, whatever, would you give to someone to say, like, hey, just like the season is changing, you can change this too?
Yeah. No, I think it's, it's okay, right? I mean, it's okay to feel that you don't have clarity, that you don't know what your next steps are, that you may feel stuck, that it's okay to feel those things. And I think the fact that you are feeling those things says a lot about your awareness and your focus on yourself, right? That says mountains about you care about, hey, I'm not feeling like myself, and I want to change that. And so that's step one right there, is I want to be able to change that. And then it's, let's start to look at, what do we need to do, what do we need to explore to get you back into alignment. I made a post today that talked about life should never be something that gets in the way, right? And life is a gift, and it's unfolds in the way that it's meant to unfold for all of us, but it should never be something that gets in the way. I would be an actor, but I got married and had kids, and then life just got in the way. Like, that should never, life isn't something that gets in the way. Life is a precious gift, and to be in alignment with life, to let and flow with life, is really, that's all we need to do. It's all we can do. So
I love that. So, for everyone who's not feeling like life is flowing in the direction that you need it to be, it will be okay. Paul, thanks so much for joining me
thank
today. And
you.
for everybody tuning in, we will see you next time.